Hey guys, how's it going? Michael Troy here. I'm so excited today. I know I often say that this is one of my favorite cartoonists, but this is absolutely one of my favorite cartoonists. I've been dying to talk to him. We've been trying to get together to talk. I'm a huge fan of all his work. He has a Kickstarter launching on Monday from one of his amazing projects. He is touting Atta Boy right now, his big launch from Mad Cave. So excited and what like easily one of my favorite comic books. We have much to talk about. I'm so excited he's here. So everybody, welcome. Thank you for being here, Tony McMillen. How are you?
Michael, I'm really well. Thanks for having me. Honestly, huge fan of the show. I think you know that. I'm a subscriber. I've been watching, I think, almost from like the very beginning. I went back and watched like the first episode, but I think I've been here the whole time. And I was kind of amazed that we've been on same projects together. We've corresponded, but I don't think I've ever been on the show yet, which is kind of crazy to me.
You have not. I know there are a few people that have eluded me, and you are definitely one of them. But we've been planning on doing this, and we keep in touch here and there through our various projects. And I'm always following whatever you're doing. Um, did you? Let's see. Let's back up. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I feel like we definitely have a similar comic book journey. It seemed like we like a lot of the same genres. You're into the horror genre. You're huge into movies, into video games, horror. Like you have such an eclectic, impressive body of work. I don't even know where to start. So where did your love of comics start? How old were you when you were introduced to comics? What was it? Was it cartoons or comics, or what made you fall in love?
Good question. I think I grew up in the late 80s and 90s, and so I was primed for a lot of those image guys, and I was into their Marvel work. And also, I did just like Batman for some reason. And I think Batman's kind of like force fed to you as a kid in America, but he is awesome. And so I was into comics a little bit, but what really kind of put it all together was 1989, Tim Burton's Batman movie was inescapable. And that movie was everywhere. There was merchandise everywhere. Everyone's wearing t-shirts. And I saw the film, I think I was 8 or 9 years old in the theater with my Aunt Susie, and it just really put my imagination on fire. And so when that happened, the next big thing was that since the Batman stuff was everywhere, the Dark Knight Returns was being sold in bookstores, the trade paperback. And so my aunt saw that, it's like, oh, this is like a legitimate book. It's a graphic novel. And so she bought that for me. And I was way too young to even comprehend it, but I was really mystified by Frank Miller's work. And that made it so like there was no turning back. The comic books were all I was about. And so I just kind of became a voracious reader of comic books. And I think part of it was I always like to draw and I appreciate the art. And I got into different artists who some artists who've been on your show, like Eric Larson was one of my big Spider-Man guys, and McFarlane too. And I was just the right age for all those guys to be really popular. And of course, Frank Miller was already kind of legendary. And when Image happened, I was exactly the right age for that. And I kind of haven't looked back since. And like you said, I like a lot of different genres. And what's cool about comics is, the superheroes are great, but they're even within superheroes, there are subgenres, and there any kind of genre you can think of, there's a comic book for it. If you like romance, if you like horror, if you like literary dramas and family trauma, there's always a comic book for whatever you're into. And as I've gotten older, I really appreciate that comics have always had multifaceted uh, capabilities.
I thought you said family trauma, and I was like, who doesn't love a good family trauma comic book, right?
Either it makes you feel much better about your own terrible family, or it makes you definitely feel like okay, someone else is going through some crazy stuff too. You can feel like a little kinship to them.
Yes, there is something definitely of like misery loves company. There's definitely something comforting in like being able to realize that maybe somebody is going through a similar or worse experience than you are going through. It's funny, it occurred to me as you were talking. I always tout myself as like the superhero guy. I love superhero books. That's the main genre that I cover on my channel. Although I'm branching out, I'm trying to get better and get into. I mean, I was reading Love and Rockets when I was young, so I'm not, completely not indie. And I feature a lot of indie people on my show. But I was thinking, actually superhero, because you look at the X-Men and it's actually not just a superhero comic. It's a Western, it's a romance, it's a sci-fi, it's, a horror comic all in one. So
It's a baseball comic sometimes. They play baseball a lot, like a lot more than you
yes, they
think.
did, didn't they? Um, so when were you mentioned Frank Miller, what other artists were you drawn to, or were you immediately knowing, like following artists and being like wanting to draw like them and helping them, using them to help develop your style and things like that?
Yeah, I think pretty early on I latched onto the artist over the characters. I still love those characters, but I wasn't the kind of kid who would just buy anything that was Spider-Man. I had to make sure I liked how the art looked, and then also the writers, and if I liked those kind of stories. So I start paying attention to the names. And so early on, I liked Eric Larson, Todd McFarlane, Frank Miller, Sam Keith, a lot of the weirder styles I was really drawn to. And then even people like Sal Buscema, I really liked he did a run on Spider-Man I really enjoyed, and I was around for that. And then Tex, Mark Texeira, who did
Oh,
like some
love
Ghost Riders.
text.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I was super into that. And even guys like Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld, I did like when I was younger, especially. But the weirder styles I was really into, and I really liked the pairing of superhero books with weird styles because in a way you have the superhero formula, which is always attractive. And if you have a weird bend to it, like the Sam Keith drawn a Wolverine story, even the story is still meat and potatoes, he's gonna make it really funky. And that's
Hmm.
really fun. It's like when somebody's not a technically great singer, but they have a really weird voice, and you give them a pop bubblegum nugget. Like, okay, sing this, like have Bob Dylan cover Britney Spears. It's gonna be kind of cool and weird because the bones are there. This is a great chorus, this is that, but they're gonna deliver it in a very off-kilter way. And so I really liked that. And I still like that. Like we mentioned Michelle Fife. Michelle Fife's stuff is when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is a very idiosyncratic guy doing a very personalized, weird style, but on superhero books. And it's not like a wink wink, like satirizing superheroes. Like, no, I love superheroes. I'm gonna do it my own way, and it's kind of cool. It's like if Spike Jonze was going to direct the next like Avengers movie, it's like, what would that even look like? It'd be very different and very distinct. And I love distinct voices in all art, I think.
You're a genius, but you knew that. Like, I think that's like the answer. You know what I mean? I feel like people are kind of feeling like they're getting sick of superhero movies. And I don't think it's the genre that's played out. I think it's the approach that's played out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like stop copying. James Gunn did good and other people did good, but stop like copying them and like break the formula, change it. Give me a Spike Jonze freaking directed movie. Give me a David Lynch directed superhero
Ah,
movie. I mean, could you imagine like the New Mutants Demon Bear saga directed by David Lynch or
oh my God.
something like that? I have chills just even saying it. I
Exactly.
mean,
You're so right. Like have somebody with a real voice and make it personal, make it weird. Yeah, one of my dreams was I love movies as you know. I like the movie Brats and Scorsese and De Palma. I was like, what if they did their own Universal horror movies back in the 80s when they're prime? Like how cool would that be to see like, oh, this is Scorsese's Frankenstein or whatever. Just have those guys go because I think that Coppola did do Dracula. He did it a little later in his career and I love it. But it would be great to have them in their prime. So yeah, right now, when it comes to film and superheroes, just give someone a little carte blanche to just go a little nuts. That's what they gave Tim Burton restrictions, but let him do his own thing enough that there was some real flavor in that first Batman movie, and especially part two. Batman Returns is like a Tim Burton movie and a Batman movie second.
yeah, I think that yeah, I mean, Batman is such a character that would like. I mean, I'm surprised more directors aren't like wanting to sink their like a Darren. Oh, how do you say his last name?
Oh, I can never.
Aronofsky or
Yeah,
I mean, could you imagine? Like that would be so good. It would be so good. And there's so many different, I think like a good example of like are you on the X-Men 97 tip?
I haven't watched it yet. I really, really want to. I kind of got spoiled on how what happens because I had to know, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna watch it. Yeah.
But it's really good. And I think it just shows like it's a good message to like, the X-Men film franchise is gearing up for a relaunch and stuff. And they've got to be looking at X-Men 97 because of the great response to it. And like it pays. So I feel like the best comic book movies give a lot of love to the source material. Like, Frank Miller's Sin City comes to mind,
Right.
how revered and how closely he worked with Frank on that to get it right. And, it's one of the best comic book movies made, I feel.
I agree. I saw it in the theater and I was like, "Oh my God, these are the frames of the comic. This is exactly how the comic looked. They really went out of their way to replicate that and it was kind of beautiful and different." And I think also, we're talking about the audiences. I think audiences are ready for this. The film audiences, mainstream audiences haven't seen enough comic book movies at this point, enough superhero films that they want something different. It's been what 15, 20 years of this at least. And if you go back to Tim Burton's Batman, it's been even longer, but we've been at least 10 years plus of Marvel movies. It's okay to do something different. I think people want that. You got to spice it up, you know?
But I think it's like they're not a fad at this point. I feel like,
Yeah.
superhero slash comic book movies are a valid genre and they're here to stay. They've been like sourced too much to just like disappear as, nothing.
Yeah, totally. And I remember like, the dark ages of the early 90s where anything was somewhat superhero adjacent, I'd had to watch it, even if it was bad. Like I remember I used to love Mantis. It used to
Hmm.
follow the X-Files, and it wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't great. I'd watch the Phantom movie with Billy Zane, and that's fun for what it is. I watched The Shadow, and some of these have not aged great. And some are still good. Like I love Darkman from Sam Raimi. Um,
Hmm.
but if it was somewhat superhero-y, I was like, I'm gonna watch it because I don't have I'm on a desert island. I need whatever you got. And now it's insane how many options you have that are superhero directly from the comics or just influenced by them. It's everywhere. So you to stand out, I think Marvel and DC and anyone else should just make something. Even small things like such a nerd about costumes where everyone's been talking about the Superman costume. I'm like, yeah, just give me some cloth. Give me something, an actual material instead of like Kevlar or whatever rubbery thing. We've seen that enough. Just give me something different just to see what it looks like. It will stand out.
Yeah, and like when I'm more excited about like Adam West's dad body and a like satin like bat suit than I am by the latest. Like, yeah, why the need for all the like piping and crap and like
Yeah.
the referencing muscles and stuff? Either just have muscles or don't have freaking muscles. Don't fake it and pad it and like all
I
this
feel bad
crap.
for these actors. Have these guys get super shredded and jacked, and you can't even see it. Like
I know.
and like the guy who played Superman on the last TV show, he's also in the Supergirl show. Super
Hmm.
handsome guy, great guy, and his suit was a little more like clothy, and you actually can see his real musculature. I'm like, good, because that guy he's really working hard to have the body. So please, like showcase it a little bit. It's like it's just insane to me. Like if I was one of those actors, I'm like, guys, come on. I'm dying here. I'm eating this terrible diet. I'm working out. Just please, just have a little bit of me in there. And also, it'll just look different. It'll look different and it'll stand out. Like give me an Alex Ross looking real guy in real life with like a cloth suit. I would go nuts. Even if the movie's bad, like he looks so good. Like I love the suits. Just have something different.
Exactly. And the S, like, why does the S have to be that weird alien symbol? Speaking of Alex Ross, I think we have him to blame, Kingdom Come. Like, yes, it
Right.
looks more alien. Yes, it looks more realistic. Yes, Wonder Woman probably wouldn't have a star-spangled suit sitting somewhere on Paradise Island, but your suspension of disbelief as a comic book fan is fairly intact anyway. So give me a damn S. You know what I mean?
Right. Especially Superman and Wonder Woman, those characters are designed for children in all ages. They're supposed to be kind of fun and poppy, and that's what's great about them. Like I think a lot of people like I grew up thinking Superman was kind of dorky, and then eventually, as I got older and I realized how terrible the actual world is, I was like, oh, I love Superman. I love him being optimistic and so bright and cheerful, and like that's what I want from Superman. I don't want it realistic at all. I want them to put glasses on him and no one can tell he's Clark Kent. I think that's adorable. I think it's great.
Well, I've spent my whole life defending the fact that Superman is not dorky. I love Superman. Like I was just the right age, like super young when I first saw Christopher Reeve as Superman. And I think that's like the gold standard for a lot of people right there, John Byrne, who obviously if you watch my channel, I'm a huge John Byrne fan. And his Man of Steel was largely influenced by the Christopher Reeve film, and it's he's very beholden to it, uh, and that's my favorite Superman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was a Marvel zombie when I was young. I think George Perez's Teen Titans allured me over to the dark side of DC, and then I'm a fan now. But I didn't have any uh, like I wasn't reading like the Kurt Swan Superman and stuff like that. I mean,
Right.
that all
Nope.
does seem a little boring before Crisis on Infinite Earths. I hate to say, but I mean, there are
Right.
some great things in there. But I think that um, I was definitely a Marvel zombie, but I was like a closet DC fan because my brother like introduced me to comics, and he was like, Marvel is where it's at, and so I had to sneak my. I actually was just like, you know what? Sorry, I like George Perez. I'm too in love with his art. I'm a DC person now. Sorry, unapologetic.
Right. That's super brave because like yeah, as a kid, Marvel just owned every kid almost. And then when Image came, then there was some more imagey kids. The one exception is Batman. Batman was always like it's totally cool to like Batman, but like for a lot of kids, it's like nothing else from DC. And I was like, well, there is some cool stuff here, and it's funny, like it's kind of not well loved now, but the Death of Superman, the Return of Superman, those books as a kid did kind of get me to open up to more of DC stuff besides Batman. And it took me a while to get into like, the Teen Titans and all these other characters. It's a great universe. There's so many things and there's so many great creators who've done great work there. And now it's actually the newer DC books I do read, especially the ones that aren't Batman related, there's a lot of fun stuff and they have a different kind of vibe in general than Marvel. And I think part of it's because Marvel was built from the onset to be shared and DC isn't. And sometimes it kind of makes it a little weirder, but that's kind of fun.
I know it's funny you should mention that because that always struck me. Yeah, like it seems super obvious because yeah, like Marvel was built like you said as a shared universe. DC was kind of like this cherry picking hodgepodge. I mean, they collected a lot of different properties, like I think Charlton characters and
Right.
Wonder Woman and Superman and Batman, and they've always been like the what do they call them, the Trinity or whatever. And
Right.
I always think it's kind of weird when they pair up. Like, 'cause sometimes if you think about it, it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. Like, but it's
Yeah,
cool at the same
What is
time.
Batman doing there? But it's like, yeah, Batman and Superman, if you think about it, like there's no reason there's no problem they really need to solve together. But they're the two biggest superheroes. You want them to be friends. You want them to do something together at the same time. It's a little strange, but I'm a sucker for any Clark and Bruce talk, like when they're like off the clock and they're just being people. It's always charming. See, you have Bruce as this out of touch kind of rich dude who doesn't really get people, and then Clark is of course is a farm boy, even though he's also an alien, so he's a little more human. That's always fun to play off of, and like when they have Christmas, like there's an episode of Justice League when they go back for Christmas to Clark's family, and Bruce doesn't know what to bring him, so he brings him money. It's like I love that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I mean, realistically, Batman's like got to be just like a total psycho, like just to
Yeah.
like do everything that he does. And Superman's straight up the most powerful being on the planet and an alien at the same time. So it's really, really weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is super weird. But I should mention that you did that really great. I think it's a 4-page story chronicling your discovery of Batman and this story you kind of just told me when you were little. Um, you just did that for fun, obviously, right?
Yeah, and that's actually one of my favorite things I've ever done. And it's just a little 4-page thing, but yeah, and people seem to like it. I posted it online because it's I guess the 35th anniversary of Tim Burton's Batman, and on Twitter, like a bunch of people saw it for the first time and really dug it and stuff. They're like, you got anything else? I was like, well, I do have a few other things I've done. Yes, thank you very much. But I think it's the only real auto comic I've ever done. I've dabbled in like kind of autobio stuff mixed into my other stories, but this is just the true story of me as a kid watching Batman and Aunt Susie buying me Dark Knight Returns and corrupting me as a child, and it set me on my path.
Well, if like if you look at your body of work, I feel like you definitely put yourself and your experience, you draw from like your interests, your life experience, and your philosophies, and just things that are near and dear to you in all of your work. You know what I mean? Like, so what was your first published work? How did you first come to that?
Yeah, so I guess before I did any comic books, I self-published a prose novel called Nefarious Twit, and I did a Kickstarter for that, and it had some illustrations, and I was always kind of ducking doing comics. I still like to draw, but I was kind of like comics are too intimidating for me. I was like I can't do all the panels and the angles, and it's just too much work. I just don't think I'm good enough, and so I kept ducking it, and so I did Nefarious Twit the novel. And then I worked with an artist named Catalina Ruffin, and we did a book called Oblivion Suite. It was a slim graphic novel. I think it's 80 pages, and they drew it and I wrote it, and we both created the story. And that was really fun, and it was a big learning experience because I did every bad writer mistake you can think of. I had so much dialogue, so many words. I didn't understand how panel, but it taught me a lot about it. And then after I did that, I realized I was like drawing more and more, and I got into my current favorite tool, which is the Pilot Parallel Pen, and I really kind of changed my style of drawing, and really kind of made me feel like I found my own voice a little bit. And then I said, I'm gonna try this book, doing a comic book myself, and I did a few little 2 or 4 page stories just for fun. And then I did Lumen, and so Lumen was my first like was it soup to nuts all me book. I did everything. I colored it, wrote it, drew it, and Lumen felt really good. And I basically realized I still liked writing novels and writing, doing journalism and making music and all those things, but comics was a much more natural fit. It felt like I loved every part of the process, even the parts that which can be frustrating or kind of I don't know, maybe a little mind numbing. I still kind of liked it. And so I was like, oh, this is what I should have been doing the whole time. So I did Lumen, and then I just kept on going. I did 4 issues of that book, and I really liked it. And people also, I will say people liked it too. It took off a lot faster than any of my prose novels ever did, or my music did. So I was like, okay, maybe this is worth pursuing.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Michel Fife and his style. I definitely would include you like in that group of artists. Your style is very distinct, very unmistakable when I see it. You mentioned Sam Keith earlier. I do see a lot of Sam Keith in your art, but you're not like a Keith clone by any stretch of the imagination. I see a lot of, I see some Frank Miller. I see some
Yeah.
John Romita Jr. I see, but the most important artist I see in all of your art is Tony McMillen, of course. So
Well, thank you.
you're just, it's like I'm glad that you talk about people having a good response to you, and it's just low key annoying. It is, but everything you do is really good, and everyone likes it, and everyone responds very well to it. So you're
Well, thank
definitely
you.
an important voice in comic books, and it's nice to see someone sort of just, I don't know, find their voice. And it's interesting to hear your story about not even having the confidence to do it, and now you've just been like on fire. It's like you're kind of a mass producer. I mean, so not by now you've written what, 3 novels, or is it more?
Yeah, I think it's maybe slightly more, but yeah, I've done like three, I guess four technically graphic novels, and then I've done some like 3, 4 prose novels. There's a lot, and there's some short stories and single issues and stuff. It's building up, but it's been like 10 years technically since the first novel, Nefarious Twit. So, and maybe 8 years since Lumen. So, it's a decade of me. But yeah, I'm faster than a lot of people. It seems like.
Well, you just seem to have a good like flow. Like you seem very like I don't know, you seem to like know what you're doing.
No, I think so. It's funny. Every once in a while, I'll talk to other artists about like just like their process, like how do they go through their day. And one thing I see a lot of people do that I don't do, but they it's basically they'll talk about how like they'll pencil a bunch of pages, maybe 10 pages at once, and then they'll ink all those pages, and then they'll color all those pages, and then they'll letter all those pages, and basically they'll have like 7 days of just doing one thing for different pages. Like this is my pencil week, this is my this week, and they talk about how they get really bored and they get really burnt out. I was like, oh, I don't do that. What I tend to do is I will make a complete page in one day if I can. I'll draw it, I'll ink it, I'll color it, I'll letter it, and that's a page that's done. And if I'm really feel like I got a lot of time, maybe I'll do 2 pages. Um, and so this way, I'm never like, oh my God, I have to color another page. No, I'd spend a couple hours doing coloring. I spend a couple hours doing inking that day, and the next day we start again. And so I'm never like sick of one part of the process. And it's funny, I always I'll talk about this to people and they always go, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, all right, well, that's cool. I don't feel super burnt out or anything. I'm just saying it works for me. And maybe you should try it. Just maybe just give it a whirl. But no, it's funny, everyone hates their process, but then they also they don't want to change it. And I get that in a way because you're it's like athletes who are like superstitious, like, oh my gosh, I can't clean my socks. I had a great game when my socks are dirty. I had to wear dirty socks every game. People get a little weird about stuff like that. And so I'm like, okay, that's cool. All I know is this is working for me pretty well. I seem like I'm happy and I think the work's good, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm always down for something new and exciting to help make my process better. So, um, what was I going to say? So, was Lumen crowdsourced or a small print run, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so Michel Fiffe, we discussed huge inspiration artistically and as a storyteller, but also his I guess model of basically he makes the book and sells it on Etsy. And he didn't do a Kickstarter or any of that stuff. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. He just did it. Like it's very kind of punk rock. And I was like, I'll just try that. I got an Etsy shop, it was fairly easy. And that's what I did. For Lumen, I basically just I use social media like Facebook and Twitter and I don't think I was on Instagram yet, but basically I just kind of told people, hey, I'm making this comic book. And it did okay. I mean, it was a smaller print run. I think those issues were like 250 tops print run. Although I did have to do reprints of like issue 1 and 2, I think. But there were smaller runs, but they did sell out eventually. And I did that. And then when I finally collected the book into a trade paperback, I sold on Etsy too. But then I realized I was like, okay, I think it would be a good idea for me. I'm like, I'll do single issues. I'll just release them and kind of sell them through Etsy and talk about it on social media. But when I do a collection or a graphic novel, I think Kickstarter is a good way to get the word out. It makes a little bit of an event out of things. And I think that's a good way to attract new readers. And so I start adopting that model where if I did like Serious Creatures, I'll do issues 1 through 6 individually, sell them to my shop. And then when it's time to collect them, then it's Kickstarter time. Now it's time to kind of draw on new people and people who already got the single issues. And I think just for publicity, I think Kickstarter or any sort of crowdsourcing or sort of service is really good for that. Because, like when I did like I think it was Serious Creatures or maybe Atta Boy on Kickstarter, like Bleeding Cool or somebody will just go, hey, these are the cool Kickstarters are going on this week, and that doesn't happen with my individual issues. Because like sometimes for me, and it's all really up to people's own individual druthers, but some people who like every single time they do a single issue, there's a Kickstarter for it. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, just can you, I don't know. I feel like you're asking too much of people, too much to like just wait for the book and do this and that. Sometimes it's cool to just release stuff, and then for the big things, maybe then we have a call to arms or whatever. And also, the thing about indie comics, as I'm sure as you know, as someone who reads them, it's a bit of a dicey proposition sometimes when you go, hey, I'm releasing this 5 issue series. You want issue 1 or 2? And it's like, well, I do, but are you gonna really do those 5 issues? I want this to be a thing that's complete. You have to have a little trust in people. And one thing I learned from Mr. Fife too is that he did a thing where, for like a series, he does a subscription through Etsy. So you buy issues 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 or whatever it is. And that means that he's sort of like, hey, we're going to handshake here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to release these books. Here's the time schedule. And he does. And that's what I do too. And so what's cool about that is it happens to me as a reader and happens to me as an author. Sometimes people, they might like your series, but they forget to check in on you and they go, I didn't know issue 3 came out. I didn't know issue 4 came out. I got issue 1 and 2. What happened? Subscriptions means that guess what? Doesn't worry. Don't worry about it. We got your money. I'm going to send you the book when it comes out. I'll send you the next issue. It's all part of the pact. We got a deal. And I think that works for both ends. And I love it as a reader. I go, okay, well, if you lie to me this way, I'll never trust you again. But since you are saying you're going to release all these issues, I'm paying you the money. I feel confident you will give me the books and we'll both be happy. And so I think that's a cool model to adopt. This seems simpler and cleaner to me.
I like that. I think it's good. Yeah, like uh when you yeah, like I saw how you were selling some of your books on Etsy and I was like, oh, that was really smart. I need to like steal that
Mhm.
idea. So I'm glad to know that you had already stolen it from Michelle Fife. So I think
Feel
it's
free.
good because there's, as I talked to Michelle Fife, who, we talked a lot about creating Copra, his new guide to indie and self-publishing, and I'm so glad that exists. You know what I mean?
Same.
Just in our conversation here, it just goes to show there are so, I mean, that's good and bad. Like it can be overwhelming, but it's so good that there are so many options and there are no right or wrong answers. It's you have to find what's viable for you, what works for you, what makes you happy. I have to say, like, you did bring up a good point with like the individual like issues and stuff. Sometimes that does get like a little crowdsource exhaustive. Like if you're doing a series and the book comes out like several times a year, I don't think that's a great model to do it. Like, it's a big
Yeah.
ask. You know what I mean? It's like, I, I want to be able to, like give somebody something that's amazing that they feel like they, uh, they feel it was worth spending their money on, and then we're done. You know what I mean?
Right. And also, you and I, and I think a lot of our audiences, we all are part of the same circles online. And so eventually we're like, okay, everyone's got some sort of crowdfunding thing. Like it gets exhausting, not just from you, but from the whole group or the various groups we're part of, because there's a lot of overlap. So I think sometimes, yeah, you gotta kind of pump the brakes and just go, okay, make it, and it also makes it more special. It's, not every day is Christmas. So, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, you do a big project or, you do a collection and then you go, guess what, guys? This is the big thing I'm doing. And then people get kind of, jazzed for it. It builds anticipation. And Michel Fife is good at this too, where usually he doesn't like share a lot about a project until it's for sale or it's up there. And I learned that slowly. I was like, oh, 'cause I love sharing stuff. I will drown in compliments. I need it. I'm sad. But on the flip side, if you just when it's time to drop something and it's for sale, those people won't forget about you. They won't they're excited right then and they go, "Oh, there's a link. Click that link. You might get a sale much easier than if you just are showing process stuff all the time. Then when it's time to share it, people are like, they'll miss it, or they're kind of like just not. It's not as sexy as it was when you first just like showed people. So I think that's an important thing to take from Michelle Fife, and a few other people have kind of adopted that too.
Well, I think, listening to you talk, I think the most important example and the best example of this is Beyonce. You know what I mean? It's like you
No,
never hear
exactly.
shit. It's not like, ooh, Beyonce's in the studio. Oh, she's doing this. Oh, she's doing that. It's like Beyonce dropped an album last night while you were sleeping, and everybody fucking bought it. So you better buy it fucking now, and you do.
Yeah, and it's so. I remember when she started doing that, I was like, "That's so savvy. That's the way." Because that was also a time when everyone else was always doing like, like 30 days until it drops, 2 months until it drops. This summer, and it's like, just please, just release it, just drop it. And like you said, it starts conversations. People are like, "Have you heard? It's already out. They are secretly working on an album or a movie or a comic. It's already here." That's
Mhm.
awesome. And as a fan, I love that. I'm like, oh my God, like I had no idea. I thought the last one just came out. It's already here. And that's what I'm kind of trying to do now. Like I have a couple of projects I'm working on, and I'll tell people what they are, but I'm not gonna really share any pages or anything until it's like, hey, you can now buy this. Would you like to? That's the idea.
I know. It is a good lesson. Like I have so much art I'm setting on for my next project, and I'm just like dying to share it with the world. But I realize it does completely take away from the impact. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna sit on it.
No, I think and like I said, it is a little, it's a bit of a test. You want to share, you want to say, like, this is really cool. Check this out. But it's much better, I think, to wait. And I think as a creator, I've learned more and more. There's like some things feel really good in the moment, but they're passing. They're like, they're just they're quick, but the more satisfying things take longer and they're bigger projects. And when you finally release them, you're like, okay, I waited, and this is a deeper satisfaction as an artist or creator, and they'll last longer. It's like a full course meal instead of some junk food. It's like, oh, this is great. I'm this and this and that. I just feel like I got all my food groups. I feel good.
Are you listening, kids? Tony McMillen is dropping nuggets of wisdom like machine gun fire, rapid succession right here. People, pay attention.
Take your vitamins, say your prayers.
W- Wash behind your ears. Um,
Yeah.
so what was next after Lumen? What was your next project?
The next one was Serious Creatures, the first six issues. And so what was fun about that was that, yeah, there he is. Yeah, thanks. Oh, I still love that book.
I love
That
it
was
too, except for the tiny font. I have old
oh
eyes and it's hard to
you're not the only
read.
person. And actually when I do reprint it someday, I'm going to redo the lettering. I've decided it's just one of those things. And that was the next book after that is when I actually start hand lettering things. And this is sort of a cheat where I was using a font based on my own handwriting and it got too small because this book is really wordy too. And so this Serious Creatures is like a very literary book. It's about the special effects industry in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it's sort of like a Boogie Nights or Goodfellas-esque take on these guys who make special effects in like monster movies, basically. And I was really taken by Rob Bottin, who was a 14-year-old kid working in Hollywood, and he was on Star Wars and it says Star Wars at age 14 and making monster masks. And I was like, what kind of life is that? And so I did that after Serious Creatures, and what it was I was gonna make a novel out of Serious Creatures because I had written a short story. I think it was like 40 pages long, which is kind of was like the proto Serious Creatures. And I kept thinking, to see this stuff in some sort of visualization would really help the story. And it would also make it easier to do sort of surreal things because I was thinking if it's about special effects, it'd be kind of cool if it had special effects. If you could feel the character's emotions and moods by things transforming, people turning into monsters when he's sad or upset, or when he's really excited, it feels like he looks up in the sky and he sees like a shark destroyer, which is like the Star Destroyer from Star Wars, but it's a giant shark. Things like that. Just it's much easier to do that with drawing than actually somehow figuring out a way and writing to kind of get that across. So I did a couple, I think I did like a 5-page test run of Serious Creatures as a comic, and I was like, oh, this is the way to do it. This is much better. This works. So I did 6 issues of that, and each project I've kind of learned there's some big takeaways that kind of go towards the next project. So Lumen was sort of just like ground zero, figure out how to do a comic book. The big takeaway for Serious Creatures for me was I start coloring differently. I start doing it's the work's still drawn on paper, it's analog, but the coloring is digital. But in Serious Creatures, I learned to do like crayon brushes and watercolor brushes for the coloring. I was really trying to emulate Basil Gogos, who did the Famous Monsters magazine covers, and they're always kind of oil slick rainbow and real psychedelic. And I was trying to get towards that. And so that was one of the big takeaways that really I kind of adopted that coloring for most of my projects moving forward. And the one thing I realized after doing that book, because the book is so wordy, and it's those Serious Creatures is the wordiest book I'll probably ever do, because it's so much about conversation. It's like, okay, I gotta start hand lettering these things. It'll teach me to make things more legible. It'll also teach me to truly kill my darlings and cut down on some of the wordage because I don't want to write all those words, and that alone will help me edit. And it has. And so moving forward, that was one of the big takeaways. But it was kind of fun to Lumen was very action oriented. I love action adventure. I love superhero stuff. Serious Creatures, the big challenge was how do you make people talking interesting in comics? Like, what's the trick? And Sam Keith, we mentioned earlier, was a big like North Star for me. I was like, oh, half the Max, even though he's a big purple guy with claws, is him and Julie talking or him and Sarah talking. But it looks really visually cool, and I'm never bored. It's not like some Vertigo books kind of get boring sometimes, and I like a lot of Vertigo books, but sometimes I'm like, oh my God, just have somebody do something interesting or abstract or weird. Sam Keith figured it out. And I was like, okay, I'll try to do something like he's doing, where you still have plenty of things which make you make the eye dance around. And so I think Serious Creatures that was the big challenge, and I loved it. But of course, when I was done with Serious Creatures, I was ready to do some more action stuff and less wordage immediately after that. So it was fun for a while, but then I had to switch it up.
Well, the cover is beautiful. I mean, I love the colors. It's just so striking. You know, I'm a big color whore and I just love your colors. Like
I'm
what
the same. Yeah.
do what inspired what well you mentioned the monsters covers and I'm sorry, what was the name of that artist?
Basil Gogos.
Yeah.
Great name
And but
too.
Bev, right? I know. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, Basil Go-Go's. That is so good. So then, what happened after Serious Creatures?
So then it sort of comes back to like bef when I was going to do Lumen, the original idea for Lumen was this idea I was kicking around for a while where I was like, it would be cool to do a comic book or an art book that was disguised as a video game manual. Because I used to think that video game manuals were like this sort of underappreciated art form. I remember the Zelda manual and the Mega Man manual and the Castlevania manual, all these old Nintendo manuals. I was like, they're beautiful and they are storytelling in their own weird way. As a little kid, I actually thought they're perfect because the games are so abstract and the graphics, you couldn't even tell what was happening half the time. You just saw this little blob. Like, I guess it's supposed to be an ogre. I don't really know, but the book will tell you, yes, it's an ogre. He has three eyes. This happens. And then he's this, and you get little hints of the story that you didn't get anywhere else. And so I was like, I had this idea, but I didn't have a story really. And with Lumen, I was like, I could do this as a video game manual, but I think I just need to learn how to do a real comic book and not add this crazy decorative element to it because I think I just need to make it a little more basic so I could figure out how to do this. And then around the time I finished Serious Creatures, I was drawing this little guy called Atta Boy, who's a little like Astro Boy, Mega Man kind of knockoff guy. Oh, you guys, you go. There he is, my boy. You get the big one too. That's the
Oh, I
guy.
know. I cherish it. I sleep with it. Um,
As you
that's how
should.
much I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
I do too. I actually tell my wife to leave. Like, no, it's me and Attaboy's time. We
We
snuggle.
spoon. I know,
Exactly.
but I do like this one's better for when I'm on the, on the plane or something.
There's an Attaboy for every occasion. But like so I had this character of Attaboy all of a sudden. I was like, okay, this could work. He's kind of like Mega Man, okay. But I still didn't have you mentioned before, I do put like personal stuff in all my stories, even if they're really like fantastical. Even Lumen, which is like a world of endless night and there's mushroom monsters, there's still some personal stuff in there. And I think that I need that to kind of have skin in the game that kind of make me want to tell the story. And so of Attaboy, I wasn't quite sure, but what had happened in my life was when I was doing Serious Creatures, I became a dad. And I kind of thought I had done my angry at my parents' stories or enough of my first novel, Nefarious Twit, and a few other things. I kind of thought I was through that stuff. Becoming a parent, a lot of that crap kind of came to the surface all of a sudden and got really charged in a way it hadn't before. And I was like, I think I have a lot to say about my folks and maybe being a parent in general. And I was like, okay, I can actually use this attaboy thing in a very veiled, allegorical way. I could use that to give it some heart, and then it start really coming together. I start having all these ideas kind of pop into my brain, and then Attaboy started becoming what it is, which is it's a really weird book, and I like that it's weird, but it's very strange. I, it's it's one of the things people like they've been really nice and kind to it. But every once in a while, I'm like, I don't know. I think it does work, but it's kind of weird that it works. It's so off.
I was so hoping that you were going to tell me that this was like because you really did like remember this video game that didn't exist. Like that would be the craziest thing ever. Like I love a good conspiracy theory. Throw me the latest Mandela effect. You know what I mean? So the concept is like really genius as far as
Thank you.
feeding into that sort of conspiratorial kind of thing. And I have to say, before I forget to mention it, it's just like listening to you talk and knowing your body of work and knowing uh, your process and what you put into it. You really, I think, one of the great things you do that is often missing from the genre and any genre now is you bring that sense of wonder to everything you do.
Oh, thank
And I
you.
see that in you as you're talking. You have that in you. You know what I mean? So it's nice to know that like you're not completely bitter and jaded like the rest of the world. Like,
Oh,
it's very charming, like in a lot of ways.
oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I think there's truth to that. I think it's like I weaponized naivete. Like I know I'm naive. I know I'm kind of gullible in a weird way. I remember one time I was like, I think it was 25 or 26, and I had a girlfriend, and we're talking about something, and she's like, "You think you're like this dark, brooding guy?" She's like, "The reason I like you is that you are kind of she said it in a nice way, but basically kind of childlike." I think that you're actually very bright and you have a lot of fun and you have a lot of imagination. She's like, I don't think you are this like you got yourself wrong. And I think at first I was like, No, you don't understand the pain I've been through. And then more and more, I realized, oh, she was really right. Like I was so unself-aware. I was totally off about myself. And I think that's a good thing. And I think it's, especially if people are going to be storytellers, I think it's really good to you can try to put on like a bunch of different masks and different ways to kind of present yourself, and that could be interesting. You could be even good at it. I don't know. Maybe you can be good at it. David Bowie was really good at that kind of thing. But I think the easier route and probably the easier way to be successful as a storyteller is just embrace whatever it is you are. And you can try to be more. You can try to get more inside your mind, but I think it's easier just to speak from the heart, whatever that is. And that's what I'm trying to do. And Atta Boy was like a big like lesson of like that works sometimes. I think it's funny too. That was the only that's one of the books where my audience I still have a kind of a cult audience. Not like it's huge or anything, but Attaboy after Serious Creatures there were more people, and the first time I actually heard people go like if they had heard about Attaboy, they're like, "Oh man, I can't wait for your Attaboy." Because I had said stuff like it's gonna be like David Lynch's Mega Man. It's gonna be this and that, and it's really leaning into the Mandela effect. I wasn't really talking about the emotional part of it yet. And as I was making the book, people were like really excited for it. I was like, "Ooh, I hope I don't let them down because it's kind of a swerve. It's a little different than maybe the first way I introduced it when I was in conversation talking about my next book." And luckily, people really dug it and they actually embraced the way it is. And that includes like now that it's been re-released through Mad Cave Studios and it's in like stores everywhere and stuff. Stores everywhere. It's in stores that order it and stores that people ask for
It's
it.
in stores everywhere. Get it today, everyone. Atta Boy. No, it has such a great name too. I mean, obviously, right? I mean, come on, that's like print the money off of that alone. It's such a great concept, and it's interesting to hear you talk about how like a little like you're almost disconnected in a way. Like you're like it's kind of weird. It's this thing. It's almost like you brought it to life to serve the project rather than serve yourself, which is kind of cool. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought of it like that. I think you're right. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, finish your thought. I know what I'm gonna say next.
Okay, all I was gonna say is like yeah, people who have read it now, it's fun to 'cause, you know I did it like 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago originally, and it's cool to have people like oh this is like they're really excited about it, and I'm really happy about that, and it's kind of cool to revisit it, and now it's been like 4 years, and like I'll go oh yeah I did that, and people ask me questions like I think it's because I think the reason why I did that was this. And I'm realizing like, oh man, this is gonna get even harder. If people still care about Attaboy or anything I do as I get older, it'll be like when people ask like John Byrne or Chris Claremont some question about X-Men, and they're like, I think we are just trying to do this. I there and because part of me's like, you don't remember why you made, Phoenix die and this and this and that. And it's like, it's been a long time. And I'm sure they put their heart in all those things, but time happens and you kind of some feelings fade and it's gets harder and harder to bring that stuff up. So it's kind of fun. And luckily there's records. Like I'm talking to you. And so if I contradict something, I'll be like, well, back in the day I said this. So that's probably closer to the truth. That's kind of fun. So we'll see.
You just need to be coy and take like the psychiatrist approach. Why do you think that
All
I
right.
killed Phoenix?
Oh, that's good. I'll actually totally adopt that. That's fun. Just ask a question right back.
Right. So, but ambitious is one of the words I'm going to use to describe
Hmm.
you and having, I mean, so you did do this huge treasury sized edition, but you
Right.
did a standard edition as well. And
Right.
this is you self-publishing again. Was this a crowdsource or how
Yeah.
did you do this one?
Yeah, it was a Kickstarter, and this is one of those things where I did Lumen and Serious Creatures, the single issues, just selling to my shop, but then Serious Creatures I did a crowdsource for the trade collection, and I realized okay this works for a trade, and I knew Attaboy wasn't going to be it's just going to be one book, one graphic novel. I think it's 74 pages or 80 pages, something like that. I was like, okay, it's one thing, and I really want this to be like a big event. 'Cause I feel like I was making the book, I was like, this feels special, this feels different. The way I'm telling the story is different. And I knew at the time I still am, I was in love with Treasury editions. I started collecting like some of the old Kirby ones. Eric Larson had done a few Treasury size books, and I was just really taken by that format. I was like, oh my God, why isn't everything this big? It's just so much fun. And especially if you're an Eric Larson or Jack Kirby or a me, if you do a lot of two-page spreads, and you have really big figures or really big action on that huge format, it really just feels like a giant movie theater screen. It feels humongous. I was like, okay, cool. This could be like a rock concert kind of comic book. So I really want this to be big and I want people to see it. I want to make a big dent. And so I did Kickstarter and did really well. And people it did really well and people really loved the big format and I loved the format. I sold out fairly quickly of the big format and I realized I made my money. I didn't like lose money on this project, but shipping it and printing it the size was a little restrictive as far as I couldn't make a I wanted to reprint it. I was like, it's gonna be a lot of money to do those things. I was like, maybe I should do a normal size edition now for the reprint. It'll save money. It also saved the people money because I had to sell it for I think 22 bucks just to make it so I could make a profit and everything would make sense. And so I made the smaller edition and I think it really works in smaller edition as well. But the treasury ones, those big guys, those are kind of to some people, those are kind of like the white whale. They're looking for them. And I know a
It
shop
is
in
a white well.
town.
Like I said, I cherish this MFR.
I love that you got it. Like there, I know like every once in a while someone will be like, hey, I read Atta Boy, I really liked it. I heard there was a bigger edition. I'm like, yeah, I know a shop in where I live, Massachusetts, that has a copy. I don't know anywhere else. You can check on eBay maybe because like
Yeah,
they're
I
gone.
remember. I forgot how I got mine, but I reached out to you and you're like, "Yeah, they're gone. I think so and so might have a couple, and so did, whoever that was, and thank God." So I have it. Um, what was I going to say? Oh, so then how did this lead to being published by? But I have to say, like, it is so good. Like, it is genius. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It You will be 100 years old at a convention, and people will be coming up to you and with their Atta Boy action figures and everything like that, and you're going to be like, "Sonny, give me that Sharpie."
Oh God,
Um,
that's the fucking dream. That's what I want. I mean, I remember I was tabling at Indie Comics Creator Con last year next to Marty Keen, who does Still Streets and Spider-Man Bootleg, great guy. And somebody presented him with they had made a full helmet of his Still Streets character that fit on their head, and they gave it to him, and he put it on his head. And I turned around, and I had never been more envious of a person in my life. I was like, oh my God, some fan made you your character's like headgear. And I was like, oh God, I want that to be me. Someone's got to make the Attaboy helmet, and you
I
have to
was
give it
gonna
to me. That's the
No,
dream.
there's gonna be like a full Attaboy cosplay before you know it. If anybody is smart, they're gonna do that for sure.
Please
I
do.
mean,
Yeah, you'll make my year if you do this.
well, I see like I mean, you've made it when I see a ton of Attaboy fan art in our social circles. So I mean, that's got to be flattering because if
Oh,
it ain't worth anything, nobody ain't gonna draw it. You know what I mean? People are too busy drawing Batman and Wolverine. So
no, you're totally right. Whenever I see it, I'm always like, I have a huge smile on my face, and I'm just always flattered. And also, so many of them look so cool. And there's a couple I'm like, oh my God, man, maybe you should have drawn the book. I don't know, because this is pretty good. There's something there.
I know I saw the one that was like really mind blowing, and I was like, wow, this really like speaks to the versatility of this character.
Thank you.
Uh, what was I gonna say? Oh, so how did it go come to Mad Cave?
So what's funny is, when Attaboy first came out, it had made a little bit of a stink. There was people talking about, it, which is cool. So I was like, okay, I'll try to like parlay this into maybe a deal. And so I reached out to like Image Comics and I reached out to a few other publishers via email. And I think I think I stupidly mailed a couple copies just blindly, which I don't recommend. It hasn't worked for me. No one. I think they're sent back to me like, don't do this.
Yeah,
Because
no one
okay.
gives a shit. Trust.
Yeah. I learned it the hard way, and so it there was no deal, and so that was for a couple of years, and then basically almost a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago. No, it's a year and a half ago. Anyways, so what happened was I actually got laid off from my job. I have a day job. I got a bunch of us got laid off, and that's kind of a bummer, but luckily I had some severance and it was okay. And so I was like, okay, look, I'm gonna look for a new job in the meantime. I should also, just for my own sake, I need some good news. I'm going to start shopping Attaboy again because I think Attaboy is unique enough and weird enough, but also at the same time kind of accessible that could be a good first book for the mainstream if people want me to do that. And so I reached out to a few places, and it's funny, I don't know what happened. I think I got better at writing query letters, but I got a bunch of good positive responses. One was from a literary agent for children's books, and they were very interested. And we had a Zoom chat, and it was a nice chat, and they had a lot of success with their other books. But the one thing they said was, love the book. What do you think about like increasing the page count? I was like, okay, well, like it's like 74 pages. Like, what are you thinking? They're like 200? I was like, 200 pages. And they're like, well, the 74, just get to 200 pages after the 74. I'm like, uh-huh. I was like, that's more than doubling the book. I can't, I was like, I gotta think about this because that changes the whole book. I don't know what to do. And so that was like, all right. And so then I had another literary agent who actually did pass on it eventually. They're into it. They're like, we just don't know if we can sell it. We like the book, but And I was like, oh, cool, that's fine. But then Mad Cave came back, and Mad Cave was really cool. They were like, we love this book. We like it as is. Like, let's do this. And I was like, okay, that's really refreshing to hear. And I was like, okay, I had to kind of balance it out. I'd never been in a position before. It's been crickets my whole life. I was like, oh, I kind of have two offers here. And one offer is to change the book in a way that I just didn't think would work. I was like, I can't. That's just too much fluff. It would radically change the book to triple the page count or whatever. But the other guys liked the book as is, and I had a really good feeling talking to them that they really had read it. They really had understood it. And so I did my due diligence and got a contracts lawyer who was very affordable. If anyone has a deal, was it Full Bleed Rights? They do comic book stuff. Great working with them. Very affordable. They worked with Matt Fraction and all these big name people. They work with nobodies like me. You can afford them, I think. Have them look at your contract if you get a contract offered. Everything was good. The money cleared, and it was so exciting. And I got a job too, so it was a full win for me. And the cool thing about Mad Cave is like, my editors have been great, and it's creator owned. I still own it. I own the IP, and I really do have the final say on everything. And they're like, the changes are mostly minimal they asked for, and I've said no to things, and that was that, and that felt good. And it's weird. I'm a very polite person mostly in my life. I'm from Ohio originally. I think there's some Midwestern stuff where yeah, yeah.
Toledo.
Yeah, oh, see, exactly. And sometimes it's bad. Like if I order like a sandwich and they screw up the order, half the time I'll just accept it and
Yeah,
and
we're
not even.
annoyingly polite. Yeah,
Yeah,
trust.
it's actually kind of sad. But I realize, which is good, when it comes to comic books and stuff I really care about, I can get my hackle up and I can be really almost maybe a little too much like precious about stuff. And it worked out fine. I think we added like 6 commas. We added like one or two little blurbs of text, but the art's all the same. I changed the cover because we just wanted a new cover. Um, it's the book. If you liked Atta Boy before, chances are you're gonna like this one because it's basically the same book. And that was a good like calming thing. So I was like, oh, I don't have to fight these guys. They're totally with me. I do have the final say here. It's not just, them talking me up. So I don't have much to compare it with as far as where I've worked with a publisher for one of my novels before, and they were very nice too. But it's been like the best experience I've ever had when it comes to publishing something.
Well, I'm so glad you went with Mad Cave. I really love they're on fire right now. I love what they're doing. I love their new Dick Tracy book. They've got some other exciting titles coming out. So I'm glad that you're part of their family. And but I mean, Atta Boy, not to jump the gun or anything, but the trajectory seems clear for this will be a movie someday. It just has to. Like directed by Spike Jones, perhaps. I don't know. Why not put it out in the
That would
ether? Like
work. Yeah, thank
that
you.
would be
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Or somebody. It doesn't matter well, yes, of course it matters who directs it. I mean, it could even be you. It might be ambitious for a first film, but we didn't even mention the fact that you're a musician. I mean, you're like such a well-rounded artist.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
Serious Creatures is heavily based on film. I'm sure you seem like the type of guy who has a slight itch to direct. Is there any of that in you?
Well, there is. When I was a little boy, my first job I wanted to be was a farmer, and then I realized it was hard work. So my second job I wanted to do was be a director. And I love Spielberg, I love Tim Burton, I loved a lot of those guys. And as a guy in my early 20s, my good friend Peter Leon, he made a lot of independent movies, and I would help him with. I'd write him, and I write him with him, and I also would star and act in them. And he's still making movies, and they're really fun. But I realized like how much people work it is, and how film is, even if you're a crazy auteur director, it is collaborative. I mean, it has to be. You have actors on the screen. You can't play every role. You have to collaborate with people, and collaboration is very tricky. It's hard to keep your vision, but also sometimes you do have to compromise because maybe your idea isn't the best idea. You got to do what's best for the story. It's really tricky. So I would like to direct, but it'd be kind of weird. I almost would like to do like it turned out badly. Sam Keith did like a terrible like I think it was a ski movie or something, and it ruined. He hated Hollywood ever since, but he directed some terrible movie, and it was a really bad experience for him. But I'm like, yeah, it's probably best to not do your own thing first. Like have some training wheels, like write RoboCop 2, like Frank Miller, figure it all out. But at the same time, if you're gonna give me a bunch of money to make Atta Boy the movie, yeah, I'll do it. I'll
Right.
fuck it up. Sure, let's do it. It might as well be me. But yeah, making film would be great. I still would love it, but I would have to develop better skills at talking with people. Because like I said, I'm either too polite or I think I get too just like I don't know, I guess rude. So I gotta find a medium ground. I don't know.
Rude Midwesterner. Oh my stars and garters. Are you
I did move
serious?
around. I'm so sorry. I moved to Arizona. Things are a little rougher in Arizona, and now I'm in Massachusetts. People
Uh,
are very rude here.
so what came after Attaboy? Are we getting
Um,
to the second most important comic of your career yet or not yet?
oh, oh, yeah, exactly. Because it involved you. It was
Yes,
the Friday the 13th bootleg comic. And you did a gorgeous pinup, and I think you approached me. You're like, Can I do
I
this?" I'm like, "Yes,
did.
please."
I'm
Yeah.
that asshole who would be like, "Hey, oh my God, you're making a Friday the 13th comic book bootleg. I totally want to do a pinup for it."
No,
And you
you're
said yes. See, it's a good example of just reaching out ridiculously on a whim and somebody saying yes to you. So you don't know unless you ask. So
I have no problem with talented assholes approaching me. That's the thing. It's always like tough when you're like, "Oh, thank you very much," and you're just like, "I'm not going to tell you I don't like your artwork." I was like, "Thank you, but I'm kind of doing my own thing." But if someone very talented like yourself approaches me, I'm like, "Oh, please, this is great. I'm glad you took the initiative. It looked great." But yeah, I basically I had this thing where I have a friend named Clay McCormick. I'll say I'm friendly with Clay. Clay is a cool guy. I've been on his podcast. We don't hang out all the time, so I think I'm overstepping there. He's a good guy. Clay's actually writing Batman books right now. He's actually just writing some White Knights spin-off books. I think the one about Joker's kids. But Clay has done a bunch of indie comics and he does a bunch of cool podcasts. And one of them is called the Rotten Horror Picture Show. It's about horror films, and he did a whole Friday the 13th series. And one of those episodes, he's had this thing about how obviously the continuity of the Jason films is not great. They kind of change it every film. It gets a little muddy and murky. It's like the idea Jason works best as like a ghost story or like a tulpa. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I asked Clay, hey, that tulpa Friday the 13th thing, you gonna do anything with that? He's like, well, no, I'm not, Tony. I don't own the rights to Friday the 13th. I'm not gonna do anything with that idea. It's like, do you own the rights? I was like, I don't, but I feel like bootlegs are kind of that's when like Marty Keene had did a Spider-Man bootleg and there's some other really cool ones. Daniel Warren Johnson did a Star Wars thing around that time, I think. And I was like, okay, that'd be kind of cool. And so Clay's like, yeah, you have my blessing. Go nuts with it. Because I was like, I have an idea. I think I have a whole thing. And what I wanted to do was like I'm a huge fan of Tom Scioli, and especially I love all his work. But I really Transformers G.I. Joe really spoke to me in a lot of ways. And one of the things that is like, oh, if you it's kind of back to what we talked about with superheroes. If you do it in a funky way with a very distinct style, it makes it feel fresh. And he made those characters feel very fresh because he was doing it his own way. And I was like, okay, like if I could do a Friday the 13th comic book, what would that be like? I think that'd be very different and weird. And I was like, okay, I got an idea. I'm gonna do this, and it'd be kind of fun. Like Tom Scioli, I love playing with analogs. Attaboy is a bit of a Mega Man analog. I love even Lumen, my Esteban from Lumen. His armor is sort of Spider-Man 2099, a little Batman, a little Boba Fett. There's definitely influences in there. So I was like, let's just play it the real thing. What would it be like to actually have the real toy? What could I do? And so I did this book, which is pretty nuts. It's sort of like an extended trailer for the Friday 13th movies. And what's fun about that book is people liked it a lot. I think mostly because you're pinup, but people liked it a lot.
Of course. I mean, it's a great selling point for sure.
I just opened the book to that pinup, like this is in there, and then like it's $5.
Thank you for
But
not embarrassing me by making it the cover. I mean, that would have been too much. I mean, so thank you for
you can
that.
rest assured I would never no. But like people loved it, and what I did learn though is it sold out kind of quickly. I think I did like a 300 run and they sold out pretty quickly. So I ordered some more. And that sold out a little slower, but it did sell out eventually. But what I learned is that a lot of those people, and this is totally fine, they just wanted that book because they like Friday the 13th. They weren't gonna buy the rest of my catalog. They weren't maybe even necessarily super big comic book people. Some of those people, I'd say most of those people who bought that book from me, that's all they wanted, which is totally fine. And some did come over and they go, "Oh, you do like serious creatures? That's like kind of horror adjacent. Let me check that out. Oh, you did Atta Boy? It's neat." But mostly were just for that. And so I was like, the bootleg thing, I like to do it because I love that I really had a story I really wanted to tell. I thought it was really interesting and cool. But if you are a comic book artist and you think a bootleg is going to be your ticket to like a bigger audience, in my experience, didn't work. Maybe your thing will be different, but I think sometimes people just want that from you. So I might still do another bootleg in the future. I have some ideas, which would be fun. It just again, it's because I want to do it, but I have no illusions that this is gonna like kick off some huge new part of my career per se.
Yeah, like that's such a good point because, like especially when Cartoonist Kayfabe featured Mighty Keen's bootleg Spider-Man, obviously, that's the golden ticket or was the golden ticket for a
Right.
while in the indie comic industry. But yeah, like I'm sure tons of people bought bootleg Spider-Man, but they're not necessarily buying Steel Streets or Superhero. But it does lead to that, of course. But you're right, like that's funny.
I will
But
say though, they
that
should buy
said,
Steel Streets rules.
no, anything Monty King does is
Yeah.
amazing, and I really love his work. And he was also has a pinup in my Big Bang comic book, which we're gonna get to eventually. Um, but I have to say though, aside from the gimmick of it, or the bootleg aspect, or the fan just service, it's a really good story. Like the Friday the 13th, like it's really good. Like I'm like, oh my god, this is so good. Like this should be part of the actual canon or whatever. And one of
Thank
the
you.
concepts that endeared you to me in it was the concept of the horror mom. Like, how you like me, I had a mom who didn't care if I watched rated R movies, introduced me to
Right.
all, probably to the detriment of my mental health, but, just eating up all these monster movies and horror movies. And so you use the term horror mom. And I just love that. Like just this thought of these like moms who love horror and let introduce it to their children and, create little psychos like us.
God bless him. Like seriously, I love it. Like my mom was all like totally fine, and it's funny. She was a little like she didn't do anything about it. She was like like that classic American prudishness. It was like if it's a decapitation, that's fine. But if you see any breasts, Tony, just fast forward past them. I was like, okay, sure, mom, that's right. We're gonna do whatever we want.
I know.
But
And every once in a while you'll post some art with exposed breasts and I'll think, naughty, naughty, Tony.
well, it's funny. I actually it took me a while to be like okay with that because I'm like, and now I'll draw like a penis, a vagina. I don't care. It's all art to me. But I think I was like deep down, which I thought was weird to me, a little like And I think what it wasn't even prudish. It was like I'm afraid people will see what I think is sexy, and that will
Mhm.
expose me. And eventually, I'm like, well, that's fine. I mean, it's okay if you don't like what I like too. That's totally fine. And that goes for like, anything. I think people who make art, you should be open to be like a lot of things can be sexy and things that you might not even think. Like, you can be straight and think that, well, Batman actually looks really sexy in this drawing I've done. Or even like not, it's kind of crazy to say, but not even human beings. They can have like a weird creature or even like a architecture. There's something about it. This is cool. This is like exciting and scintillating. I don't know. I think you don't have to do it, but I think a lot of artists should try to embrace what you think is kind of sexy in the world and try to put it in your art, see what happens. You don't have to, but I think sometimes that element, it's like you're a diamond. You have all these facets. You could try to show us a little bit of every one. You never know. I mean, some artists aren't great at sexy. Like I think Todd McFarlane never did the sexy stuff for me personally. Didn't really work for me when he
You didn't when Mary Jane was like in her like lingerie.
yeah, no, just too many lines on those things. I don't know. Something about it wasn't working for me.
Yeah, you're right. Not that, yeah. Okay, I won't say anything else. Um, but I should mention you know, you mentioned selling your stuff on Etsy. It was kind of crazy how you marketed your Friday the 13th bootleg comic. So basically, I'm sure to avoid getting the pantsuit off you, you can sell the comic. So you sold a sketch for $10, and if you got the sketch, then as a thank you, you would get this bootleg Friday the 13th comic. I mean, genius.
Airtight, airtight. I think I stole it from Michel Fife. I think before he did Cobra, he did a Suicide Squad bootleg called Death Zone, and I'm pretty sure that was his scheme. It was like you can buy the sketch, and then you get this free comic book. And Death Zone is now like it was a super limited run. It's like worth a bunch of money if you. I actually don't have a copy. I'm a big fan of his. I can't find a copy, and I'm also I'm not going to pay like hundreds of dollars for this book. I read it online. It's awesome. Not going to do it. But I was like, that's good. So Michel Fife is he's the golden goose. Like all his ideas, and you should buy if you already have them. But anyone listening, Creating Copra, his new book, DIY. It's great. And even if you don't know his work, this alone, if you're into making comics or thinking about it, he really breaks down a creative agenda for you and then also how to distribute the book. Anything you can think of, he's kind of has an answer for it, at least his answer. And he's a success story in every way.
Yeah, I really love and admire and respect everything he does. I'm a little bit of a latecomer. Like I've heard his name and like I was like, everyone always just like talks so highly. He just can't possibly be this good, you know? And then I'm like, now I drank the Kool-Aid and I'm like, oh my God, he is this good. I had to get
Welcome.
Creating Cobra as a comic creator, you know, I was very interested to see all that. And of course, getting the book and then interviewing him, you know, like totally fueled my thirst for everything Fife. And I had to get Bloodstrike Brutalist, which
Love it.
very much, you know, could be like a bootleg comic, except for the fact that he did it in conjunction with Rob Liefeld. So that's ultimately how you do the best bootleg comic book ever.
Right.
And let's face it, that's the best Bloodstrike we'll ever see and
Yeah.
ever. I mean,
Exactly.
no diss, but you know, it's so
Yeah, and
good.
I read those books as a kid. I could safely say this is the best Bloodstrike book you're ever going to see. Like you said, I read those books. I enjoyed them as a child. They're not so great going back. There's some cool stuff, and I think Michel Fife mined the really cool ideas and concepts and made something his own. He's a big Giffen fan, and Giffen did a little run on there and added some cool stuff, and he took some of that. Yeah, it was great. And it's cool. Michel Fife, he does good superhero stuff. He can do some cool body horror. He kind of injects in some stuff. There's some stuff of Tag in there. It's kind of creepy and weird. Yeah. And I'll say this too. Michel Fife, I met him a few times. Super smart, funny guy. Really just nice and personable. And but just also my what I get from him is he's very smart. He's a thinker. So if you ever get a chance to go to Heroes Con, I think it's the only show he ever does. You should go to Heroes Con, see me, but also see Michel Fife. It's
Yes.
worth your trip.
I'm insanely jealous. Heroes Con looked amazing. I'm so glad everyone had such a great show, and I'm 100% going to try to be there next year. I do have
Do it.
friends who live in North Carolina, so I can sleep on their couch for free. So there's no reason for me
Yeah, do
not
it.
to be there. And hopefully, I'll have another book out by then to make it even more worth going because, you know, it's all about shilling at the end of the day. I'm just kidding. Of
It's all about the money. No, but you want to have a good show, obviously.
course.
Yeah. And like I've only gone two times. The first time the whole experience for me was basically talking to somebody for an hour, then realizing they're like a legend who I've read the entire time I was a kid or longer. Like a big story was the first night last year, Heroes Con, Eli Schwab and some of the Cosmic Lion guys and us, we were at a table, we're all hanging out drawing at a bar at the Westin Hotel. And this older guy, he looks a little bit like R. Crumb, like really big glasses, a mustache, and kind of hat. He sits down next to us, like, can I draw? I was like, that's yeah, of course, man. And we're hanging out with him for maybe an hour and a half, maybe almost 2 hours. And eventually, I think it was me. I was like, hey, like what kind of stuff do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm mostly known as a colorist. I'm like, oh, anything I would know? He's like, Akira, Spawn. I was like, are you Steve Olaf? He's like, I am. It's like, oh my God, why didn't you lead with that? And he laughed. He's like, oh, I don't know. I didn't want to like, assume you knew who I was. Like, oh my God, Steve, you're like one of the best colorists of all time. Please tell us stories. And he did. He was really nice and friendly. But that was basically my entire experience the entire time is not knowing who I'm talking to and realizing, oh my God, they're this guy, or knowing exactly who I'm talking to, like waiting in line for the bathroom with Jim Shooter, stuff like that. That was the whole experience. And the first year I had just an okay financial time of my show, but the actual experience of hanging out with people and meeting people, that was totally great. This year I had both were good, but like, my quick Jim Shooter story was there's an after party at the comic shop. Heroes aren't hard to find. There's a great big barbecue. It's a beautiful shop, and there's a bunch of people there. It's only the artists and people who are guests, and so I'm in line with the bathroom with Jim Shooter, who's a very tall man, and he's
I
still
was gonna
tall.
say if you didn't know who Jim Shooter was standing next to you, then I can't help you because like he's
Yeah,
unmistakable.
he stands out, and he's got a cane now, but he's still extremely tall. And we were making a little chit chat, just kind of normal stuff, and he's very fun. And then I'm next for the bathroom, and so someone comes out of the door, and I get up, and he looks at me, he stands up, looms over me, and he goes, "I need it more than you," and he goes past me, and it's super charming and funny, but also he kind of meant it, and I was like, "Okay, dude, I'm not gonna stand in your way," and that was great. That was my Jim Shooter story. That's all I need.
That's so awesome. I love that. I love Jim Shooter. I would love to like I was in talks with his assistant to interview him for the my show. So hopefully that happens at some point. I watched this. I feel like he's largely like misunderstood. I mean, I
Yeah.
realized the gripes with him, but the stuff that he did, like I was a comic book fan, like the heyday of Jim Shooter, like every Marvel comic that I loved have Jim Shooter's name on it. I watched this amazing like 8 hour interview with him on like comic historians and just like he just cared so much and did so much for comics. So he definitely has a great footnote in comic book history. So that was cool that you have that great story.
No, I totally agree. He's misunderstood. He saved Marvel Comics, and he made some bad decisions with creative people, but he also hired a lot of great creative people and let them do things their own way to a point. He's an editor, like he's gonna have his own opinion, but come on, he gave Claremont the ball. He gave Frank Miller the ball. He let them do things. If you like Marvel Comics from the 80s, there's a chance it's because of what he did. Like he's a legend. He's a total legend. And so I let him use the bathroom before me. Uh that's my contribution to the
As
legend of
you
Jim Shooter.
should. You
That was the Ohio in me.
exactly. See, you cannot suppress the Midwest. You just can't. I mean, do you still oh well do they say pop in Massachusetts or do they call it soda?
They call it soda, but like yeah, my mom still says pop and like
Oh
so
my God,
yeah,
when I
it's
go home and it's like pop, 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 I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so Midwestern. I would die.
when I came to Arizona, I was saying pop and people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, pop, soda,
I
pop.
know
They're like,
people
no.
look at you like you're crazy. Like, oh my God, what is that?
There's some state, I forget what state it is, but they just call everything Coke, even if it's not Coke. Like
It's
if it's
Georgia.
okay, that's what it is. Yeah, they call a Sprite a Coke. Like I want a Coke, a
Hmm.
Sprite Coke. That's crazy to me.
I know I'm waiting for the explanation. And when somebody told me that and they're like, No, we just do it." I'm like, there's no reason. And people just kind of accept it. I guess it's hot there. I don't know. Like, I don't know why.
The heat's a factor. It's great. Maybe
Um, so what happened? Okay, so
Friday
you didn't
13th.
hear you didn't hear anything. Like they weren't like, look, fucker, like cease and desist. Like you
No,
never heard any of that, did you?
but no, I didn't. But it's funny. I think part of it was my whole thing about only doing trade paperbacks or graphic novels through Kickstarter that helped me because a little bit after that there was somebody I'm Facebook friends with who was like, "Hey Tony, like I'm going to do a Friday the 13th bootleg too. I liked your book a lot. It's not like your book, it's my own thing, but just wondering like you've done Kickstarters in the past. Why didn't you kickstart this book? Were you afraid of a cease and desist?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I wasn't. I told him like what I told you. Like I usually don't do single issues on Kickstarter." He's like, "Okay, cool. I'm going to do one." And he was like so he actually launched his Kickstarter and it looked really cool. He had some pages done. He got a cease and desist, and they stopped him, and his book did not come out. And I was like, oh man, I guess I kind of ducked a, dodged a bullet there because yeah, they told him no, 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 you cannot do this. And I was like, oh man, it's a
Well,
comic
I'm
book. I was
surprised Kickstarter even. So Kickstarter stopped him, or
I think it was actually somebody who has the rights. I think
yeah,
I could be mistaken. I don't know the exact details. I just remember he came back like, yeah, they stopped me. I was like, oh geez, sorry. Ooh. And
yeah,
luckily the good news like he didn't like complete the book already. I think he was a writer and he had different artists. They did a few pages, so it wasn't like, oh man, I can't even, I would be afraid to release this as a bootleg now. It's like no, he didn't lose that, but that was a bummer because he was doing well. I think it was out for at least a few days. And that's why I think it wasn't Kickstarter, because Kickstarter, if it was them, I figured they would just go, no, 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 we're not going to let you even try this.
yeah. They're really like, no, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, on one hand, like, I mean, it is. Copyright should be protected, but
Sure.
I'm totally fine with the way you did it for some reason. I don't know why, but
Well, I'll say for my thing, like Friday 13th, the rights have been like in limbo for a long time now.
hmm.
So that's kind of the reason why I did it too. I was like, I just want something new that's cool and good. And so I kind of feel a little justified, but it's not true. I mean, the truth is like if someone did an Atta Boy bootleg, I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? Not
Right.
cool. And then it'd
No,
probably be like,
yeah, you would
well,
have to squash that shit right away.
I'll get my team of lawyers. Yeah. Unless it was really cool, then I'm like, okay, let's give me a percentage here. We can talk. What's up?
Well, it's cool though. Oh, I forgot to mention Atta Boy has this really cool trailer that Mad Cave made for you
Yeah.
that like it's so cool. I just love that it shows that they like really love and support the book. So
And what's cool about that trailer too is a guy named David Rice who makes comic books. He made that music for me. He's like, I love Atta Boy. I was inspired by it, so here's some music. So the music in the trailer is from a fan, another artist and creator. And so I told Mad Cave, like, hey, this guy made this really great song. If you want to use it, I think it'd be great. And they said, yes, we would. So it's kind of cool. Like people have been really nice to me and people have responded to the work. And so it's helped me and it's been like really cool to see like fan art and see like people creating songs and stuff. It's great.
well, not everyone deserves to succeed, but you definitely deserve to succeed,
Well,
Tony.
thank you very much. Those are stern but very kind words.
You know, that's what you're gonna get here on Michael Fitztroy TV. So what and then after Friday the 13th bootleg, what next?
I think the next thing was Bounce House Bazaar, which is
I
a
love Bounce House Bazaar.
thank you.
Grape
I like
shot, grape shot.
yeah, Grape Shot's so I had a character named Grape Shot. It was kind of my diabolic sort of assassin character. But basically I did an anthology book where I wrote all the stories, but I drew the first 20-page story features Grape Shot, my kind of Italian-ish assassin character. The other stories I collaborate with the story and wrote the words for a story called Son of Shogun with an artist named Nicola Momento, who's actually an Italian artist who lives in Spain. We start corresponding and he wanted me to write something for him, and so we worked on the story together. And in fact, the best line in the entire book was his line. So even the best word is actually not even mine. He had this incredible. There's a part where Son of Shogun's going to fight all these like ghost creatures, these big demon monsters, and they go, "We're gonna kill you and fuck your ghost." I was like, "What the hell?" And he's like, I was like, "Is this an Italian thing or is this just you?" And I think he's like, "Just me." I'm like, "Well, that's fucking good. That's pretty rough, but I like
I
it." And we'll
love
put,
it. It's
uh,
genius.
yeah. And then Ben Granoff has been a buddy for a while. He's a really interesting, great creator. We did a story about a movie theater. It's kind of an autobio story, but we made it kind of turn to a
Is
slasher
it the
movie.
3D one?
Exactly. It's actually 3D. It's really 3D. If you use glasses, the artwork is three-dimensional, which is nuts. I didn't know you can do that. But Ben's like, yeah, we can do this. And we collaborated on that. And then the last one is that 4-page Batman story, that little auto bio story about me watching Batman in '89. And so it was this cool little anthology kind of based on like the Dark Horse Presents kind of model of the cover, like, a bunch of stories together. And that was really fun to do. And then after I did that, I just released that to myself, and I did a thing too because all those guys I collaborated with, I was like, "Hey, here are the files. So we're gonna split the money we make on this book." And it wasn't like a bunch of money, but we split the money evenly. But also, especially Nicola lives in Spain. I was like, "Hey, here are the files. Feel free. You can print your own version of this. Keep all the profits. Like that's totally cool. Ben, you do the same thing. Everybody, like, uh, and actually, I don't know if they ever did, but." that I was like, that was kind of an idea. I was like, oh, we should do this. I've had a few ideas which didn't take off. That was one of them. The other idea, which I'll talk about real quick, didn't take off at all, but I still think it's a good idea for Friday the 13th, the bootleg. Another thing I did because people, when it first came out, people were really jazzed about it. I was like, it's a bootleg. I was like, hey, I made a Dropbox. These are the Procreate and Photoshop files. You can remix this if you want. You can color some pages, draw pages your own way. You can make your own bootleg of my bootleg. And
That
nobody
would be
did.
cool.
Yeah, I thought it would be really
Not
fun. And
yet.
true. It's been a couple years. I think it's like, but I was like, that'd be kind of cool. I was like, I remember Nine Inch Nails did a thing like 15 years ago where he's like, oh, here are the tracks. You guys can remix these songs whatever, however you want. I was like, that's kind of neat. And for a comic book, that'd be kind of cool to be like, officially, here's some files. Go nuts. Like it'd be so cool if like a big artist would do that. Like, yeah, Daniel Warren Johnson, this is an issue of Transformers. What do you got? Show me how you would do it. And like, because the way I did the book is like, you can kind of see there's a layer which is sort of you could say that's the thumbnails. This is the ink. This is the pencil line. I was like, that could be really fun to see what would happen. But again, the idea totally died. But I put it out there in the world. So if anyone wants to steal that idea, please do. Hopefully it succeeds.
It's a good idea. Sometimes good things die. They just do.
Such a brutal truth.
And then luckily, if you're a Tony McMillen completist, which you should be, because I mean, there's not a stinker in the bunch.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
but I invited Tony to do a pinup. I actually demanded that he do a pinup. He
It's true.
shot me down at first. He was too busy, as everyone is always so busy. But Marty Keene wasn't too busy. Um, Jim Rugg wasn't too busy to do the cover. Carrie Callan wasn't too busy to do the
Barry
cover.
Tan. Barry Tan's in there
Barry
too.
Tan is in here. Sam J. Royale. Uh,
Yeah.
Joe Quinones' amazing back cover. Brian Payne. All of my favorite friends, artists, collaborators, cartoonists. And Tony, thank God, found time in his schedule to create this brilliant tribute to Steranko with his badge, which is Big Bang's tribute to Shield. And so, thank you very much for doing
Thank
such a beautiful pinup for our book, and I really
thank
appreciate it.
you.
And it's
Of course.
gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. Gary
I was
Carlson
super
loved it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I was super happy to do it. I really liked how it turned out. But like I love you made a giant book, made a treasury edition. So I have my copy you gave me with my treasuries. It's right there. I think it's actually on the top. But I love it.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Treasury. I definitely was inspired by Ghost Agents Treasury Size Edition. Love the Atta Boy Treasury. Love any Treasury I can get a hand on. But like you, after spending the day at Cosmic Lion Productions with Eli Schwab, like packaging all these freaking books that are so hard to mail and all that
Yeah.
stuff, it's expensive and it's so nice and I love it, but I don't know that every MFT book will be a treasury size book like I thought it was going to be. So I don't think so. Like it's nice, it is great. I love it. It is beautiful. The art, I mean, the artist really got the memo that, and that was part of the appeal, from a creative point of view. Hell yeah, you want my art and you're gonna showcase it in a big, beautiful, gorgeous way. Yeah, of course. Why not? Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there is definitely room for treasury books. Not a lot of room, but there's room for them. And not every book has to be a treasury. I wish it could be, but yeah, they are a pain in the ass.
It's the shipping. The shipping that really kills it. It's just tough. Like
100%.
yeah, I use Gemini mailers. You don't have a Gemini mailer, it's big enough for it. You got to figure out. It's just a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
I think Eli found that the Life magazine size mailers or whatever
Okay.
are like the sweet spot or something like that. I don't know. But anyway,
That makes a lot of
so
sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Eli is a sweetheart, by the way. Eli out there, you're such a good cuddler. I love you. Like I see him at a bunch of cons now. It's always a delight. He's a really creative guy, really fun guy, good man.
yeah, I was gonna say I was really surprised that I think is this the only Cosmic Lion book that you have something in?
No, there's gotta be something else.
There's gotta be, right? I know I was thinking of it. I was trying to think.
Oh, no, no, that's not true because Morgan Heron. Morgan Heron's Frankie Boy. Frankie Boy
Yes.
Months. Yeah, yeah. I have a pinup in the new issue two.
Oh,
Morgan's.
awesome. So do
Yeah,
I.
yeah. Oh,
Once
exactly.
again,
Yeah,
see, I'm always in bed with Tony McMillen.
it's not a bad place to be.
It's not.
A little spoon, a
So
big
that's
spoon,
cool.
no spoon, whatever you want to do. Spork. No, but Morgan's awesome. Like you've had him on the show. Like Morgan's super talented guy. Got to meet him, I think, a year ago initially. Um,
IC3? Yeah.
yeah, I think it was IC3, but just really talented, like super enthusiastic. Also, I'm getting older now, and so it's actually nice to have someone who's not. We don't have the same problems. Our bodies aren't falling apart. He's like he's getting he's getting better. It's
Yeah,
nice to have like
he's in the prime and we're
right.
slowing down.
Exactly. It's nice to have that as part of the room, part of the vibe.
I know it is interesting. I love to see like somebody so young be so enthusiastic and actually like producing and making comic books. I mean, I first made my own comic at the, printing shop when I was 12 years old. So I was very ambitious, but I feel like I should have be so much further by now based on that.
Oh, sometimes I think of that too, but at the same time, on the flip side, starting a little later is you have more life experience, you have more to say, you have probably more discipline, more patience. And there's something to say about that. I mean, I would love to be like, Jay Lee started, I think he's like 18 or 17 making comics and he was like a pro at Marvel by 20 or something. That would be awesome. But I didn't have the discipline. I wasn't ready. And so, it happened the way it happens. But yeah, seeing Morgan, I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. Like unless something really weird happens, he's gonna keep making stuff and he's gonna have huge body of work. By the time he's my age, he's gonna be
Yeah. I think he's poised to
up
pretty
there.
much do whatever he wants to. So he's in a good
Yeah.
position. And he has good people guiding him, like Eli Schwab and Cosmic Lion Productions. I
Yeah.
feel like he's in good hands there. So,
No, totally.
the future looks good. Sometimes I don't like to talk about it too much because I think it's a negative buzz point that is kind of non-existent. More popular YouTube channels than mine often like to talk about the death of comic books, but just look at my channel and all the creators that I showcase and all the amazing books that have just come out in this past year. Comics is alive and well. It Marvel and DC are not the only avenues for comics or creators, and they haven't been for a long, long time. So, it'll be great to see the amazing comic books that are coming out and still coming out from people like you and Morgan and Cosmic Lion and me, of course.
Of course. No, I 100% agree with that. And it's funny to me. Like I've had the last few years, some of the best comics I've read are from these years, and they're from indie creators. And there's also been some really cool mainstream stuff too. I think it's kind of funny how people are banning about the death of comics, and I'm like, I don't know. And even financially, like the GI Joe Kickstarter thing did like 3 million or something crazy. Like
Wow.
yeah,
I didn't know it did that well. That is insane.
I think it's the biggest Kickstarter for comics ever now. That's Skybound. It's a big thing. They're not like super indie nobodies, but that's not nothing. $3 million. That's pretty good.
I'll
I think
say.
yeah, I think comics are doing good. I think comics are doing fine. It's weird, but yeah, there's so many like it's funny reading Copra. I think was what really kind of got me into like truly indie books and going for like, some really. I had read some like like Love and Rockets things in the 80s and 90s, but like the newer indie stuff. I mean, Copra was what opened the door, and now half of my favorite books now are indie books are just books that aren't harder to find. Even creators like Jeffrey Allen Love's one of my favorite creators, and his book, The Notes from the Shadowed City, that wasn't like, in all these bookstores or whatever. I found it online and I got into it, and now I love consuming it like that. It's almost, I don't know, it's like I feel like we're part of a there's a bunch of scenes happening all at once, but the overall scene is like this sort of like people are just making cool comics now, and now we can do it. Now we can get them printed full color if we like. We can send them to people. The quality is very good. It's a great time to be a comic book reader.
It is. It really is. I know. I'm very, very excited about it. Okay, where are we now? Okay, so after Friday the 13th, I
Right.
know I didn't realize I was going to do this like Tony McMillen timeline, so I apologize.
No, it's
You
it's
seem
great.
more prepared for it than I am. Thank God. It is your life after all. So what came next
So
after Friday the 13th?
and
Oh,
we did
great
that.
shot. I'm sorry. We're
Yeah.
we're past I'm sorry, what was the name of the anthology?
Bounce House Bazaar. Yeah.
Bounce House Bazaar, which also is the name of your studio.
Yeah. My Vanity Press, my self-published books are from Bounce House, which is actually I think the first art book I did was called Bounce House, and I latched onto that name, um, which is funny. Every once in a while I go to my wife's family's house, and her mom has a copy of Bounce House hanging on the wall, and I go, oh yeah, this is like from like 10 years ago. This is kind of neat. The front cover has a picture of a Teen Wolf slamming a basketball. I did that for some reason. But anyways, the next book I did, I think it is Serious Creatures Real too. I think yeah, that's right. So then basically I had done 6 issues of Serious Creatures. The story wasn't done. The story kind of left at a good point, but there's more story to do. So I did 6 more issues. I did those individually, and actually for the first time, because a friend of mine asked me, there's a place called Crowdfunder. It's its own site, and he was like, "Hey, we're doing a big push. We're gonna have a bunch of indie comic book people at the same time do crowdfund together." And he's like, "Do you have a project?" And I was like, "Well, the next thing I'm gonna do is like 6 individual issues." And he's like, "Okay, great." I was like, "Well, I don't usually do individual issues as a Kickstarter or crowdfunder." He's like, "Well, you should consider it." And so I did. I did a subscription. I offered that, and I did my 6 issues of Serious Creatures, which would finish out the story. And so, the thing I'm doing now on Kickstarter is actually a Kickstarter for the collection, and so this is like the proof of that. Um, it's
Awesome.
I think it's actually my I think it's the strongest work I've done. It's at this point, like I was talking about how I learn new things each project. Like Atta Boy, one of the big things I got was I started hand lettering things. And that improved the lettering. And another reason why I need to, when I re-release Serious Creatures, the first trade, I need to redo the lettering is I want to kind of more match the new stuff here because it looks much better here. But this completes the story of Bobby Feckle, who started out as a teenage special effects guy in the 70s, and this takes him up to the 90s and 2000s. So you have like CGI coming into Jurassic Park. In the meantime, it's all this movie history stuff. It's also a very personal book. You see this kid who's very talented, but he's also his life's kind of in disarray. He focuses on his art more than his personal life, and his family's got a lot of problems and hangups, and there's a lot of struggle there. And so there's a part in Serious Creatures issue 1. There's a part which is kind of I think encapsulates my approach to doing personal stuff and stories which are not really about me. So in the comic, Bobby's a little 14-year-old kid, and his sister is going to be moving across country to live with their aunt, and she's not going to come home with him back to Arizona where he lives. And so he's not sure when he's going to see his older sister. It might be a couple of years. He doesn't know, and he's going to miss her, and then she's going to miss him. But they're also, they don't know how to talk about it. And so she knows that he's obsessed with Famous Monsters of Movieland magazine. He loves those magazines, and his favorite issue, he's kind of keeps with him. And so when he's going to go to the airport, he leaves it on the car seat, and so she's kind of crying. She's kind of like it's a hit in her that she's gonna be away from her mother and her brother, and she's like sees that he left the magazine. She's like, oh my God, this idiot! And so she runs after him. She's like, hey, you left this here, and he's like, no, it's for you. She's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, this way I know I want to get my magazine back, so I know I'll see you again. I have a reason, and she's of course like very touched. Well, that in my life, the version of that story is my sister moved across country. I gave her Spawn #1. It's my most cherished comic book. And she was like, dude, this is your favorite book. I'm like, I'll get it back from you in a little bit, however long it takes. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been putting my little parts of my life into these books, which have nothing to do with me, but now they do. And also, I got the book back. I saw her
That
again.
was the question. Yes, and thank God. I mean, I feel like we've all been in those situations where you don't get spawned back, but it's your sister, so
We can all relate. Yeah, even Todd.
yeah. Um, well, that is cool. I mean, you definitely have to like. I know. I feel like I think that happens a lot as a creator. Like somebody will say something so genius, or just like some experience you have. Like this would be really good to like work it in somehow. I know. I don't think I consciously ever do that, but I think sometimes it happens subconsciously, you know. So
Yeah, I think everyone does that. And I think it maybe even better if it's subconscious because then you're not even like worried about it. You're not like judging yourself, and you realize later on like, oh wow, this is actually about this. Oh my gosh, I don't know.
and speaking of the Krauts, it's a Kickstarter for Serious Creatures Reel 2. The collection is launching Monday, which will probably be live at the time you're watching this or close to it. We're going to put a link for the Kickstarter so you can be alerted or go to it and contribute to that. If you do have now, is there an option to get the first trade as part of the package? Obviously, because
No,
that's always the thing too. It's like, you know, it's like sometimes I feel like we talked about the individual issues. Like I might be inclined to get in on the third Kickstarter and get like the three issues rather than the single issue. You know what I mean?
right, super smart. Yeah, exactly. So I have a bundle option, and actually, what's cool about the bundle is you can get both books and save $5 off the top because you're getting both of them, and so it's actually a pretty good option. And also, this book is issue 7 through 12. You're gonna want to read the first six. It works much better as a big piece. But there's like I have tons of cool rewards. There's gonna be original art from some various books, just original drawings, but also original pages from Atta Boy, from Friday 13th actually bootleg, from the Serious Creatures books from Lumen. I did a bunch of prints for Heroes Con and I sold a lot of them, but I still have some left. And so they're really fun. Like some are small, like this kind of guy, like little tiny guy. But there's also some huge ones. I did
I
my
love that.
oh, it's fun. I had a lot of fun. Like, I did a picture of it's clearly Kelly's Batman, but I wrote Amazing Spider-Man on it. And I've
Very
been
ironic and cheeky.
yeah, I've been making this joke for a long time, but it was kind of fun at Heroes Con. I was like, I bet you this is gonna piss off a lot of like 9-year-old boys, and it did. It did, and they
That's
stopped.
not Spider-Man.
Exactly. It was delicious. I was like, yes. Because like I remember I used to be a video clerk, and I remember one of just to have fun, there'd be like little league teams that would come in and with their mom to rent something, and I'd be like, hey, how was soccer today, guys? And their faces would drop, and they would half of them they knew I was being a jerk. And the other half were like, does he not get it? Does he not understand what these uniforms mean? And they're both fun. They're both great responses. And so I relish that. And so I'll be selling that. So in case you have a 9-year-old in your life you don't care for, you could get my print and show it to them.
Well, I should also mention, since we talked briefly about Indie Creator Con, it was like the first Indie Creator Con in where was that again? In Maine or something? Not
Yeah.
Maine,
No,
Maine,
oh, it's Connecticut. No,
Connecticut.
I live in New England. They're all the same. Every state here is the
Sorry,
same.
I'm
Sorry,
so bad
guys.
at geometry. But but you did a really great poster for that.
Oh, thanks.
Really
Oh,
beautiful poster. Were they selling those at all there?
they were, and actually, Matt Sardo, who runs the con, he actually gave me a few. He's like, "This here, have some of these too." So I'll be selling some of those on my Kickstarter, and I sold some of those at Heroes Con. But I was really that image of the kind of flayed man with all the implements of comic book making, kind of in his body and his gristle and his sinew. That was cool. That was fun to do, and people really dug it. And actually, I had a few people who at this Heroes Con they just wanted that poster. They saw that and they're like, "Oh, it's available." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, please get it." And some of them were creators too. It's kind of I guess what the statement is, if there is a statement. I don't know.
It's high art. I love it. It's very
Oh, thanks.
Hitchcockian and body
Oh, thank
horror
you.
and gross and gorgeous at the same time.
That's what I'm all about.
Yep.
I do love beautiful, violent, ugly things. I think if you can do something that's kind of grisly in an elegant way, why not? That's great.
That'd be a good name for a book. Beautiful, violent, ugly things.
Yeah, I agree.
You can have it. Well, you said it, so it's
Appreciate
yours.
that. That's good. Thanks. Very kind of you. Very generous.
So, what I mean, obviously, that's a lot of work doing a Kickstarter and putting that all together. But I know as a creative person, obviously, you must be working on other projects. Anything you can talk about yet, or
Oh, of course.
anything?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so what I'm working on now is it's called Destroying Angel Lumen. So it's going to be sort of a sequel to my first comic book Lumen, but also kind of a fresh start in case you never read that. I'm sort of inspired by I loved the Road Warrior when I was a little boy. That's Mad Max 2, but I didn't know that. I just that was Mad
Hmm.
Max. That was the first story. So I was like, okay, that's a cool way to do that. You know, so this is going to be probably people's first Lumen story in a lot of ways, and it's gonna be, after doing Serious Creatures again, I want to do some action. So it's tons of action, tons of weird stuff. It's about a world of endless night and a hero with a lantern. He's fighting these various creatures, and he's got this new adversary called the Destroying Angel, who's like this sort of demonic, robotic kind of like Mephistopheles from Fantasia with a little bit of
Hmm.
Tron in there. It's really weird, but it's fun to draw. It also looks kind of like the sinew armor from Bram Stoker's Dracula, I always dug. But it's going to be 4 issues. They're going to be 48 pages each, and they're big. And I've done the first issue, and I'm like halfway through. Okay, I'm a third of the way through the second issue, and it's coming along. It's really fun stuff, and that'll probably be out in January, I think. But I might do a Patreon finally, and might start like releasing it that way first. But I'm very excited. I think it's gonna be really fun, and I think it's uh, I think it's the right thing for me to do now next. And I have like I got plans for what comes after that. I got a bunch of plans, but this is the one that I was like, this is ready to go. So I'm excited.
Well, that is so cool. I'm so happy that to hear that. And I wish you much success on this Kickstarter.
Thank
I
you.
feel like we've covered all the bases throughout your entire career. Effortlessly, 2 hours have flown by
Oh my
chatting
God,
with
really?
you.
Oh, it's
Um,
awesome.
as I knew it would be so much fun to finally talk to you. I'm so happy for you and with Mad Cave and Atta Boy. That's like such an accomplishment, and I'm so happy
Thank you.
for you. It's like it can only lead to further greatness.
Thank
I
you.
hope, and I mean, honestly, please come back when we can talk about the Attaboy movie. And uh,
Anytime, honestly, I've wanted to do the show for so long. I am a fan. I love the show. I love the interviews. Love just you going through books. You have great taste. You have really cool takes. I would love to be back, and I will continue to watch. So, I'm way down.
well, thanks so much, Tony. Thank you absolutely so much. Thanks everybody for watching. Please support Tony McMillen. Get Attaboy. Get Serious Creatures. Get the Big Bang Adventures. Get the Friday the 13th bootleg if you can find it. Get Bounce House Bazaar if you can find it. So these are going to be like, the Tony McMillen treasures that people like seek out, those holy grails that we have searched for from our gold standards and stuff like that. So the Kickstarter should be going now, and if not, it'll be going on Monday, and you all need to get in on that. Tony McMillen, who I often accidentally call Tony McMillion because he's worth $1 million, is the real deal. One of my favorite cartoonist, and now even more one of my favorite people because he is just all that plus a bag of chips. Thank you.
Michael.
Attaboy, Tony. Attaboy.
No one said that yet. That's good. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Tony. Hang out for a second after we say goodbye. And like I said, just throw all your money, love, and support at Tony McMillen because he's making great comics that we all want to read. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit like, and I will bring you more. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.